I send out a weekly email for my church family, Community Bible Church in Northfield, and I'm adding a new feature to that email, a link to a 3 to 5 minute devotional that I'm calling From My Bible Reading, where I share something that I've learned from my regular Bible reading recently. And I thought maybe my Facebook friends would find this a blessing. So here's the first installment of this new feature. In my Bible reading this morning, I was in Exodus chapters 1 and 2. Chapter 1 reviews the growth of the people of Israel, Jacob's family in Egypt. They had been in Egypt for about 400 years and had grown from a family of 70 into a strong and numerous people. The king at that time, the Pharaoh in Egypt, felt that the Hebrew people were a threat to his power. And so he made them slaves, and he even commanded that all the male children born to the Hebrews were to be killed by being thrown into the Nile River. Apparently at that time, kings had that type of absolute authority. Chapter 2 details the plan Moses' parents had for protecting their son. This is the familiar story of Moses being placed in a waterproof basket and floated out on the Nile River. My granddaughters Leah and Noelle and Caroline play a little game together where we reenact this scene that we call Moses in a basket. And then this was my way of teaching my granddaughters the stories of the Bible. But I digress in that. So Moses is in this waterproof basket, floated out on the Nile River, where he's discovered by Pharaoh's daughter and ends up being protected by the very family that had the authority or had given the command to have him killed. And certainly the Bible is filled with irony. So with that quick review, the verse that caught my attention is the first phrase in chapter 2, verse 11. We read, "Many years later, when Moses had grown up, he went out to visit his own people, the Hebrews." Later we learn that God's plan was to use Moses to rescue his people, Israel. While the eventual rescue was certain, the unfolding of that plan took time. In fact, the many years mentioned in verse 11 was 40 years. And so here's my takeaway on that and what I wrote in my journal. God's deliverance of those in his care may move slowly, but he is always working toward our redemption, often in providential circumstances that seem insignificant or even seem to be contrary to what we would expect a rescue plan to even look like. And in that, I thought of God's rescue of us in Christ that led Christ to the cross. Certainly a rescue plan that didn't seem that we wouldn't expect. Moses would end up fleeing for his life from Egypt and would be gone for another 40 years before he is led by God to return to Egypt and rescue Israel in the Exodus. In the meantime, Israel remained under the heavy burden as an oppressed people in Egypt. And this is how chapter 2 ends. Years passed, and the king of Egypt died, but the Israelites continued to groan under their burden of slavery. They cried out for help, and their cry rose up to God. God heard their groaning, and he remembered his covenant promise to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He looked down on the people of Israel and knew. They cried to God for help, and God heard, and God saw, and God knew. Friends, God hears, and he sees, and he knows the burdens that you face. And he will, and he has come through on every promise he has made through the redemption that is available for all by faith in Jesus Christ. Again, that entry from my journal. God's deliverance of those in his care may move slowly, but he is always working toward our redemption, often in providential circumstances that seem insignificant at the time, or even contrary to what we would expect a rescue plan to look like. I hope you find comfort and strength not to give up in what I have shared with you from my Bible reading. If so, let me know. And if you have any questions or comments, please reach out to me. And as you read the Bible, as I hope you will, remember that the Bible is one story that points to Jesus. Don't miss Jesus. He's the one the Bible is all about.